Hey, everybody, it's Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast, and we're working through the book of Galatians. We're in Galatians chapter 5, where we are into this contrasting pair of lists. One is representative of the outgrowth, the actions indicative of the stuff that points to the things of the flesh. The flesh is a complex idea, ranging all the way from just our own mortality to basic human desires, to our own human effort to try to achieve things only God can achieve, all the way to our pernicious desires that are compromised. That's a list that contrasts the acts of the flesh with another list that is the fruit of the Spirit. And in that first list, like we talked about yesterday, these things are described as acts, actions. And in the second list, the good list, we don't hear about a list of acts, we hear about a list of fruits. Now, again, we touched on this a decent amount yesterday, so I'm not going to linger a bunch here. We're going to get to the first of the fruit of the Spirit. But I do think that distinction is really important, especially in the context of Galatians, where Paul is talking so much about the fruitlessness of human effort, especially as it pertains to trying to adhere to all of the Old Testament law. To use the flesh, to defeat the flesh, is futility in the mind of Paul. It's futility in the stuff that Paul even points to from the law, the very law that some people were trying to keep. The flesh isn't going to beat the flesh. The Spirit is what gives us new life. The Spirit is what has us born anew. The Spirit is God's presence in our life. So Paul doesn't use the same word to describe the second list, the very bad stuff, acts, human effort, flesh. The second list, the very good stuff, fruit. It grows. Who is doing the gardening here? Well, we happen to know what Paul thinks about that, because back over here in 1 Corinthians 1, Paul is writing to a church that was something of a dumpster fire at times. I find it very entertaining to go around and look at all the different places that were difficult on Paul's journeys, and they all had dockside bars. Well, Corinth had two harbors, one for each sea, divided by a narrow isthmus. So as a result, I mean, Corinth, unsurprisingly, it's double bad, two sets of dockside bars. And here there was all kinds of confusion about, well, who are we supposed to follow if we follow Jesus now? Apparently there had been debate about some people following a guy who was out of the John the Baptist school named Apollos, and other people liked Peter, who also went by Cephas, and other people like Paul. And so Paul opens his communication with the Corinthians by speaking to that. And in the course of speaking to that, he talks about the question of who it is that's actually gardening these trees, these plants, this thing that produces fruit. And Paul develops this idea through the first few chapters of 1 Corinthians, and then in 1 Corinthians chapter 3, he famously says, wrapping up the whole thought about the controversy about which apostle you should follow, he's like, what after all is Apollos? And what is Paul? Only servants through whom you came to believe, as the Lord has assigned to each his task. I planted the seed, Apollos watered it, but God made it grow. So neither he who plants nor he who waters is anything, but only God who makes things grow. I don't think it's too much of a stretch to connect these two passages to demonstrate a continuity in the imagery that Paul is using here, Christians believe, under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit. It's God who makes the things grow. This isn't hard. This isn't a big question. Paul is constantly heaping responsibility and credit for all of the things that are not born out of the flesh on the work of God. All the stuff that doesn't look like the flesh is born out of the Spirit. And there he is doing it again over there in 1 Corinthians as he defuses the bomb of yet another apostolic tension in a local church, as he's done again in Galatians with another apostolic tension. In all of these cases, the impulse, the imagery, it's all the same. God is the one who makes these things grow. You can hearken back to the imagery in Ezekiel. Maybe that's the most vivid imagery of death and back to lifeiness. In Ezekiel 37, famously, you get this image of this valley of dry bones. The hand of the Lord was upon me, and he brought me out by the Spirit of the Lord and set me in the middle of a valley. It was full of bones. He led me back and forth among them, and I saw a great many bones on the floor of the valley, bones that were very dry. He asked me, Son of man, how can these bones live? Now, some of you might be like, wait, Son of Man, isn't that what Jesus calls himself in Matthew and in the Gospels? Yes, we talked about that in season 1, which is Matthew, which feels like it's been a long time ago now, so I'd sure forgive you if you didn't remember. But the Son of Man title in Ezekiel, it comes up a little bit in Daniel as well. It's intentional. It's a big deal. Yes, there's a connection there with Jesus. Here, it's Ezekiel who God is showing around. I said, Ezekiel, "O sovereign Lord, you alone know." Then he, this is God, said to me, that's Ezekiel, "Prophesy to these bones and say to them, dry bones, hear the word of the Lord. This is what the sovereign Lord says to these bones. I will make breath enter you, and you will come to life. I will attach tendons to you and make flesh come upon you and cover you with skin. I will put breath in you, and you will come to life. Then you will know that I am the Lord." So I prophesied as I was commanded, and as I was prophesying, there was a noise, a rattling sound. Then the bones came together, bone to bone. I looked, and tendons and flesh appeared on them, and skin covered them, but there was no breath in them. Then he said to me, "Prophesy to the breath. Prophesy, Son of Man, and say to it, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Come from the four winds, O breath, and breathe into these slain, that they may live." So I prophesied as he commanded me, and breath entered them. They came to life, and they stood up on their feet, a vast army. Then he said to me, "Son of man, these bones are the whole house of Israel. They say, our bones are dried up, and our hope is gone. We are cut off. Therefore prophesy and say to them, this is what the sovereign Lord says, O my people. I am going to open your graves and bring you back up from them. I will bring you back to the land of Israel. Then you, my people, will know that I am the Lord when I open up your graves and bring you back from them. I will put my spirit in you, and you will live, and I will settle you in your own land. Then you will know that I, the Lord, have spoken, and I have done it, declares the Lord. There's just no chance of me getting into that Ezekiel 37 passage and being like, well, you get the idea. Then they came back to life. Now, I should have thought of that when I went over there flippantly on a whim to talk about this theme of God being the one who is entirely responsible for dead things coming back to life. I should have thought about it, because I'm not going to not read all of that, because it's sci-fi stuff. Dead people come back to life, and not zombie back to life, like good back to life. And they don't come back to life from kind of dead, mostly dead, but totally dead, dry, dusty, not even skin or sinews on there, not even like the kind of rotted out skeletons that you see in like the booby traps in the Indiana Jones movies, and they still got like some rot and some hair and stuff on there. No, we're talking just bones, dead. The tendons come from scratch. God does all of that. And that's kind of an image throughout the Bible of just how dead, how not fruit producing we were apart from the work of God, apart from the Spirit of God. And one of the things that is one of the most offensive concepts in the whole Bible to some is the idea that, like, well, if God could make everybody believe, and if at times it seems like he even does, at least sometimes, some people would say all the time, but at least sometimes, it seems like he reaches into the world and breaks the laws of time and space. And it's like, you, right there, Abram, I pick you. You're going to follow me. You don't get the impression Abram had an option. You, right there, Saul, you who are persecuting me, you're going to follow me. And you don't really get the impression that Saul, who became Paul, who wrote this letter, ever really had an option. You don't really get the impression that the valley of dry bones in Ezekiel 37 could be like, I don't know, what role do I play in these tendons and sinews appearing out of thin air as matter comes from non-matter to assemble into a living, functioning system that is a conscious person prepared to follow God and be representative of his family? I want to know my part in this whole shebang. Look, I'm not sitting here making an argument to say God picks everybody all the time who is going to be a Christian. But it looks like there's a lot of stuff in the Bible where at least some of the time we see God say, you, right there, you, I pick you. In other words, nothing is beyond his purview or his business. It's all his call. All life in the Bible comes from God. He is always credited with it. And the imagery we get throughout the Bible, whether it's fruit or dry bones coming back to life, or Lazarus stepping out of the tomb, or Jesus coming back to life, all of it is the kind of thing that is entirely beyond human capacity. And even if a human could do some of this stuff. A dead human could never do it to themselves. The bones just can't speak themselves back to life. They've lost animation. They've lost, that idea of breath. Isn't that interesting? Both in the Garden of Eden story, with God breathing in there, and then the breath that happens in Ezekiel 37, and then the breath of God in, the Spirit breathing life into these Christians. I mean, look, when we come across this turn of a phrase, and it says, but the fruit of the Spirit is love. There's our first fruit. Obviously, we didn't get very far on love today, whatever. The fact that we're talking about fruit, the fact that Paul uses the imagery of fruit elsewhere, the fact that Jesus finds a fig tree that isn't producing fruit and isn't particularly impressed when he sees it, and it's a metaphor for the failure, for the deadness spiritually of a whole thing, a whole system that is broken. All of this adds up to the same imagery. It is not an accident that the fruits of the Spirit are fruit and not acts. It is not an accident that the fruits of the Spirit are fruit and not commands that you need to uphold by the effort of the flesh. It is so vital as we break down this list to understand that distinction is all over the Bible and all over the book of Galatians. In particular, the acts of the flesh, the power of the flesh, is not going to force the stuff that only the Spirit can do. This is a very weird equation for you and me, because almost everything we do is a negotiation. Almost everything we do is merit. Almost everything we do is transactional. This is a weird one, but it's a really important weird one, and it makes sense that the Galatians would have trouble sorting this out. It makes sense that you and I would have trouble sorting this out. But we got to understand what these two lists are. And as we dig into this first idea, which is probably the one we're going to linger on the longest, love. Well, do you hear that thunder in the background, by the way? From about a minute after I started recording, lightning started flashing outside. Not like Martin Luther, I'll become a monk kind of lightning, but pretty good lightning. And then the thunder started going. I don't know, I've got like a noise gate. If you know how audio stuff works, and you know what I'm talking about. If you don't worry about it. It's just like quiet sounds get cut out so you don't hear them. But I really hope you're getting the thunder, because it is awesome. And anytime we get thunder while I'm recording, I just feel like it's just more authoritative, Then God said to the prophet, prophesy bones. And I prophesied as such. And it's like, then there's thunder and stuff. It just feels, I don't know. I hope you can hear it. Maybe I'll have Jeff just put something in post if you can't hear it. Whatever the case, the stuff grows because of God. We have life because of God. The stuff of the Spirit happens because of God. God. He's the hero. He's the point. All of this life, all of this beauty, it's all from Him. And we simply don't have the capacity, apart from Him, to make these things happen. They don't exist. Well, nothing exists. But this stuff doesn't exist apart from the work of God and the power of God. And He gets credit for all the beautiful things on this list. Like I said, one day, 2 day, we'll see. Deep dive into this first one, love, next time around. I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast. Let's do this again soon. And cue the thunder. Go. Dang it. Come on. Go. Right now. Make me sound cool. Fire.